workflow. This is your average dressed chicken. That means it's already been plucked and it's ready for cooking. Now, whenever you're prepping something, you want to think about the workflow or your workflow planning, meaning that you have to think about the stuff that you have to do first and the stuff you have to do in between or you have to do at the end. Now, in this case, since we're going to be roasting chicken, you want to think about how are you going to dress the chicken? What can you do in between while you're waiting for the chicken to be done? And what can you do while you are waiting for the chicken to be prepped? And the first thing we need to do is we have to trim off anything that we don't need or anything that's going to be in the way when we're going to be, serving the chicken or cooking the chicken. First, you have to remove what we call the wishbone. The wishbone is located just right beneath the breast. So we're gonna just peel this back off. It's gonna be located over here. Let's try to clean this out first. You can feel it when you drag your fingers. It's like a letter A. We're just gonna expose that for you guys to see. You want to remove this because when you butcher or when you serve your chicken, it's gonna go or it's gonna be in the way when you try to remove the breast meat. So this is your wishbone. You want to remove that. So on one side, it's connected on one of the wing joints, and then we're gonna do that on the other side as well. You can use a paring knife, you can use a boning knife, anything that is small, anything that can go in between joints. Okay, pull that out. Okay, so that's the right side. Oh, broke it. Basically looks like that. I'm sorry if I broke it, but it is what it is. Okay, you want to have a container for your waste. Would be your usable waste. These are bones that you can use for stock, so we put them there. Then you want to have another container for your dry waste or non-usable waste. You want the skin of your chicken to be as dry as possible. Number one, it's gonna make it much more safer for you. So your knife is not gonna slip or your fingers are not gonna slip while you're butchering the chicken, etc. Remove the wingtip right here. So whenever you're cutting or whenever you're slicing or butchering meat, you wanna slice not through the meat, but you wanna slice in between the joints. So wherever it is bending, that's probably the joint. So if it's over here, then you want to position your knife over there, and just push that through. So it's clean. Put that on the usable waste bin. Do the same thing on the other side. So your joint right there. Next, you want to truss the chicken. When we say truss, you want to tie any piece of meat so that it will cook evenly. I will show you the traditional way of trussing a chicken. It's not the most efficient way of cooking the chicken or trussing the chicken for roasting, mainly because you have two different types of meat in one whole chicken. You have the breast meat or the white meat of the chicken, and you have the leg part of the meat. You have the thigh and the drumstick, which are more on the dark meat side of type of chicken meat. This is called the butcher's twine. Just get about, let's say, around 2 to 3 feet or 1 meter. So first thing you need to do is, on the center of the string, you want to put it just below the legs, like so. And then you want to go up and over one side and go onto the other leg. Then do the same thing on the other side. Then you want to pull it so that look like so. It's more of a they call it in Tagalog, it's de cuatro. You want to go beside the legs and then beside the wing. You want to go under the neck. Okay, I'm just gonna rotate this so it's much more easier for me to truss it. So again, beside the legs and then under the neck, like so. Now whenever you're tying, the more efficient way of using a butcher string is you want to go up and under again, and then up and under again. So you do this 3 times so it's much more secure. It holds in place much better than your regular knot. It's gonna look like that on the back side. This will ensure the skin is not gonna pull back when you cook it. Just remember, any type of meat, it kind of shrinks or pulls back when you cook them. Just give that one more knot. Then your chicken is good to go. If you want to trim the skin, you do you. I would leave it as is. We can trim the neck, why not? So it doesn't go in the way. Remove the excess string, and then you have a dressed chicken, or sorry, a trussed chicken. So the next thing you do is you want to season the chicken. This is just regular salt. This is iodized salt. And you want to do this mainly because you want to remove as much moisture as possible from the skin. And since salt is hygroscopic, that's with a G, it's going to draw out a lot of moisture from the chicken skin. Plus, it's going to season the chicken. It's going to make it much more tastier. The color is going to be improved, and the texture of the skin is a bit more crispier than the usual. At this point, you can also add some black pepper. Black pepper is good. I would rather do this before trussing, but you can do it either ways. Then we're going to set this aside, and we're going to move on with our next prep. So whenever you're working or whenever you're prepping different items, you want to clean in between tasks, especially if you're working with poultry or ingredients like poultry, which are more, let's say, risky for food preparations. You don't want to cross-contaminate any bacteria or hazardous contents of the food. And you also want to switch chopping boards whenever you're moving from a fresh meat or poultry and then moving on to other ingredients like, in this case, vegetables. At home, you would have at least 2 chopping boards, one for fresh meat, poultry, and seafood, and one for ready-to-eat food, vegetables and fruits. If you're working in the professional kitchen, you have way more types of cutting board, one dedicated for poultry, one dedicated for fish, one dedicated for processed meat, fresh meat, vegetables and fruits, dairy, etc. Today we're going to focus more on how we do it at home. So we have different types of vegetables to prep. Some of them we're going to roast, some of them are intended for the underlying flavor of our roasted dish. Some of them are peeled and all of them are washed. So as much as possible, you don't want any, especially physical dirt, to go onto the board. Okay, first thing we process is our matignon. Your matignon is comprised of these three ingredients. You have your onions, you have your carrots, and you have your celery. 50% onions, 25% carrot, 25% celery. That's your typical matignon or mirepoix mixture. First things first, again, you want a container for usable waste and non-usable waste. So we're just gonna use this bowl for our peelings or our skin or vegetable skin. Use a peeler when you're peeling. Please don't use the knife, it's dangerous. You don't want as much as possible skin on the board, your peeled skin. Even though they're washed, it's not a good practice. So put a bowl under the vegetable you're peeling so that it catches your peelings or the skin. So all we have to do is go by a ratio of 2:1:1. So this is about, for me, that is 1 centimeter. This is about 2 to 3 centimeters. We're just gonna cut this in 3. So they are about the same size. Again, you don't really have to measure them. Then just get your 0.5 centimeter cuts. You don't have to peel the celery, like for this one, since we're not gonna serve them on the plate. But if they're too tough, you can do so. Why not? Yep. It doesn't matter if you have round edges, like these ones. Get your 1 centimeter again. As long as you have even thickness, that's good to go. The same thing on these ones. Then you want to cut your 1 centimeter slices. Sorry, your 0.5 centimeter slices. Then for the onion, just cut that in half. You have layers, which are about 0.5 centimeter already. So you have to do is cut your 1 centimeter length. Make one more incision. Then cut your final dimension, which is about 1 centimeter or so. Next, we're going to process the rest of your vegetables for roasting. First one on the list, we have our potatoes. They don't have to be marble potatoes. You can use your regular potatoes. Just cut them smaller. But today we're going to use your marble potatoes. Just cut them in half. And very important to put them in water so that they don't oxidize, they don't turn brown. Next, we have your tomatoes. You want to remove the core of the tomato. The core is this one, where the fruit or the vegetable is attached to the stem. Get your paring knife. Pinch the paring knife like so. The same thing as how you use your knife. But in this case, I'm going to be much more closer to the tip of the paring knife. And then the paring motion is actually like this, or you can use it like a regular knife. In this case, I'm going to use it like a regular knife, like so. Then try to remove, or pinch it like a regular knife and try to remove the core. Set that aside. Cut the tomatoes in half and then half again. So we're going to cut them into quarters this time. Next, you have your asparagus. The asparagus are a bit tricky when it comes to prep. First, you have to remove anything you don't want to eat. The woody part of the asparagus, like these ones, try to remove them. That's about 2 to 3 inches from the root side or the root part of the asparagus. Remove that. Put that into the waste bin. Then you have an option here. If the skin is too tough, you can peel them. Just get a peeler, put them flat on the board, and then just peel ever so slightly. You don't have to do this, but if you want to, you can do so. If they're tender enough, peel them. Sorry, don't peel them. If they are again too tough, try to peel them. You can cut them into whatever length you want them to be, but you want to make them uniform in length. So I would cut them about here, and then there. Yeah. So equal length of asparagus. Again, put them in separate container. Next, you have your pumpkin. First thing you need to do is you want to remove the seeds of the pumpkin. Just get a spoon and then just try to spoon that out. Again, you put them on the waste bin. All the seeds and unwanted parts of the pumpkin, you put them on the waste bin. Next, you want to peel the pumpkin. You don't want to use the peeler this time. You want to use your knife. So you just want to guide the knife just so that you get more of the skin and then less of the pumpkin. Slice your pumpkin to whatever dimension you want them to be, but again, you want to make even cuts. I would cut that in half, and then just for aesthetics purposes, I will cut them or slice them about 1 centimeter on the thickest side, like so. Next thing we need to process is your garlic. Simply put, we're gonna make a very, very easy marinade. You can just peel the garlic. Remove anything that you don't want to eat again. And just cut them in half. Oops. So it's easier for you to peel the garlic. Since you're gonna be cutting them in half anyway, might as well cut them now. Get your paring knife and try to remove the skin. I'm just gonna do one for show. Since this is gonna take a lot of dead time, I'm just gonna show you one. Try to clean the board. Want the board dry and clean so it doesn't cause any slipping. Remove anything you don't want to eat again, and then just make incisions very thin, as thin as you can. Then make another incision like so. Then do your rocking motion. And your claw grip intact. You can give them a bit of a mince if you want to, but for this preparation, you don't have to, since again, this is intended for marinade. So this is your garlic. I just mixed this with a couple of freshly cracked black pepper and about 150 ml of olive oil. And whenever you're making a marinade, you want to have oil, you want to have your flavoring ingredient, and you want some spice and some acid. Now for the acid part, we're going to add in some lemon. That's your basic marinade. Now before we marinate your vegetables, you want to blanch them first. When we say blanching, you want to cook them prior to another cooking process. I'm going to show you that right now. Now we're going to blanch your vegetables. Whenever you're blanching vegetables, you want to add some salt onto the water. What happens is it's going to season the vegetables are going to blanch, and also it's going to increase the temperature of the water. First one on the list, you have your asparagus. That's going to take about, you want to blanch them until they're al dente. It's going to take about less than a minute. And you want to have ice water on the side ready for shocking your vegetables that are being blanched. You can check them, just check if they're soft enough. Not yet. It's a bit more, not really soft, but more on al dente. Okay, good. Put them in ice water. Let's see if there's more. Okay, none. What happens is when you shock them in water, it's gonna stop the cooking process, as well as it's gonna keep the color of your vegetables much more vibrant. Okay, set them aside for now. Then the next one would be your potatoes. Potatoes, very easy. One reason is to pre-cook, not fully cooked, but at least cook them halfway. And second one is to develop color. If you're not gonna blanch the potatoes and then start roasting them or cooking them in oil or in dry heat, if the water is not salted when you blanch them, it's not gonna develop that brown color, or at least not that much. Okay, so that has been 3 minutes. You don't really want to fully cook the potatoes, you just want to blanch them. Okay, the next thing we need to do is to marinate your vegetables. Have your marinade ready. Just give that a good mix. We can start off with the asparagus. Just have a bowl here to mix up your vegetables with the marinade. Give this like half a spoon maybe, or even a full spoon. And give that a good toss. Then notice that I have 2 trays. One tray would be for the vegetables that are very fast to cook, and one tray is for the vegetables which are a bit more tougher. Next would be your tomatoes. Give this a good amount of marinade as well. And put them on the tray. I would arrange them skin side down, like so. Then you have your pumpkin. Pumpkin can go in too. Arrange the pumpkin in a way that, again, they are evenly spread out. Like so. Then, of course, you have your potatoes. Like 2 spoons will do. And just put them on the tray like so. So notice that on one tray you have more on the starchy type of vegetables. Then on one tray you have the much more watery type of vegetables. So we're going to set this aside and we move on to our next task, and that's going to be your chicken. Okay, remember the chicken from earlier? It's her now. So there's a lot of water coming out from the chicken because of the salt. That's good. Then you remember your matignon from earlier. Again, just put them in a pot, or a shallow pot, or a brazier, or even a tray will do. Now, all we have to do now is to roast the chicken. Before that, you want to season the matignon as well, just a bit. Then add in your marinade on the matignon too. Then add in your chicken. Again, this is going to be like a bed for the chicken. And then those off trimmings, you can add them too. This will incorporate more flavor into the sauce because they will brown more. And it's gonna make a much more, let's say, much more developed sauce. Marinade can go in. And I have my oven preheated to around 220 degrees Celsius. We're gonna start off 220 to 200, let's say 200, to brown the chicken. And that's your traditional way of roasting, but you can start at around 160 and then climb up to 180. But since we're doing this in a, let's say, a much more educational manner, we want to start off with something more traditional. That's going to be 220 to start, and then to finish, we're going to lower it down to 180. And off to the oven. Okay, so this is your chicken after like around 10 to 15 minutes. You want to check if you have some color development. We have color development on one side, but the other side is still a bit more pale. Actually, it's pale. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this back in the oven, but we're going to rotate the chicken so you have much more even coloration on the skin. We're also going to lower down the temperature to about 180. So from 220, we're gonna lower it down to 180. And it's always nice to check the temperature so you have a gauge if how long are you gonna cook the chicken. For sure it's gonna be raw, but it's not bad to check right now. So it's still at around 18 degrees. So it's still a chiller temperature, or not chiller temperature, but room temperature. And of course you wanna check the leg part as well. Again, same 18. So the heat hasn't penetrated the chicken yet, but you have now a much more desirable color on the skin. Next thing we need to do is prepare the basting fat for the chicken. You can use olive oil. I'm using butter. So it's nice practice that to have your butter into nuggets when you're working inside the kitchen. You want to just put the butter all around chicken, maybe on top, so that once it's melted, it's going to accumulate at the bottom of the pan, and we're going to use that for basting. Also, we're going to add in some sage. Sage is good for meat. It's nice with poultry. We're going to tuck it under the bird so it doesn't burn. Okay, good enough. You can put it inside the bird as well, but for now, we're just gonna put them outside. We're gonna put this back in the oven and continue cooking at about 180 degrees. Okay, that's been another 10 minutes. So what we do now is we baste the chicken. What you do is you wanna move the chicken a bit, and then gather some oil or some fat has accumulated at the bottom. Then you just want to pour it onto the chicken so it remains moist. So this will promote even cooking, and of course add in more moisture onto your chicken. Cut out all those onions, they might burn. Okay. Then bring it back inside the oven, but first we have to check the temperature again. Check the breast part. It's about 39, 40, climbing up. And then leg part, and of course it's going to be much more cooler. So that's about 34. So we're slowly cooking the chicken, and I bet it's going to be about another 20, maybe 30 minutes, depending on our bird. Let's put it back. Yep, we're about 77, 78. We're above 75. We're safe. Yep. So we set this aside to rest. Means we're gonna put them somewhere not on the original vessel. And this will help promote the circulation of the moisture inside your chicken. Because when there's heat, there's a lot of movement, and inside your chicken, the water tends to go all over the place. So when you slice it, the water or the moisture is just gonna seep out, and that's not good. So we let it rest for about 10 minutes. And we're gonna make a nice sauce out of the pan drippings that we have here on our pan. We set that aside and we move on to our next task, and that's going to be your vegetables. So the next thing we do is we want to season. Oh, by the way, cooking times for these are different, so we want to cook these first, and then halfway we're going to put this in. We want to season just right before we put them inside the oven. Again, you want to season at eye level. We don't want to season this first since we're not going to put them inside the oven yet, but these ones, they can go in. We can put a bit of our oil, just a touch, just add more flavor onto our vegetables. Like so. Put it in the oven at around 180. Then let's check at about 10 minutes if they're done or not. So just a bit of salt. Final seasoning on your tomatoes and your asparagus. This goes inside the oven. And we're gonna make a simple sauce for our chicken, and that's going to be our velouté. So all the pan drippings that we have here, we're gonna turn that into a sauce. But first we have to remove anything that is burnt or too dark. Because this will impart a bit more of a bitter flavor to our sauce. So we try to remove that. And try to remove any excess fat as well. Name on. We're gonna add in some flour. So this is basically your roux. Talked about roux in the lecture. So we're gonna add about same amount of flour onto our fat. Whisk all that in. I think this whisk is too big. Let's change. So that's our fat part of our sauce. We'll lower down the heat to a minimum. All those brown bits at the bottom, we're going to deglaze that with red wine. Now you can add your wine just before you add your flour, or you can add your flour before you add your wine. As long as you use the wine to remove all those bits and pieces at the bottom of the pan. And once you add anything that is water-based, your flour is it's going to start to thicken the sauce. And what I have here is your brown chicken stock. It's very gelatinous. You can put that all in. And again, you can start deglazing the bottom of the pan too using the stock. You can do this with the wine. You can do this with stock, any type of liquid you can use for the glazing as long as it's water-based. So this is basically your veloute. It's just a fancy word for gravy. Remove or deglaze all those bits at the bottom of the pan. And once it starts boiling, it's going to start to thicken. Next thing we add is our sage. We're going to add more sage. Since we use sage for our chicken, we can add more or reinforce more sage flavor onto our sauce. So you can see it starts to thicken. It's starting to look more of a sauce than just your regular chicken stock. We're gonna simmer this for about 2 minutes, then we come back. So that's about 2 minutes. Lower down the temperature and start to season. Before you season, you want to taste. Clean spoons. Always have a container with tasting spoons. We're checking for salt. I'm gonna add more salt, like way more salt. Add in some crushed black pepper as well. Give that a good mix. So you want to taste chicken, you want to taste the sage. Clean spoon, they're a good taste. Okay, that's good by me. It's good enough for me. Flame off. And you want to strain this sauce. Get a fine mesh strainer. And just push everything in. It's good stuff. Keep your section clean. You get the chance to clean your area, just do it every now and then. It's gonna save you time. Okay, so off the flame, we're gonna impart some butter nuggets. So you want to monte, you want to monte with butter. This is gonna make your sauce much more, let's say, velvety, much more refined. And as you can see, it's gonna make it shiny. That's it. Sauce done. Okay, the last thing that we have to do to our bird is to portion it after resting. So we have to remove that butcher's twine. Just goes around, then just pull it out. First, you have to remove the legs. And just want to push it down like so. Always angle the knife towards the leg and not to the breast, or else you're going to get more of the skin of the breast, which is not going to look good, the final product. Next, you want to pop it open. Like that. And you just want to take off any meat that is attached to the bone. Angle the knife always towards the bone. So that's 1 piece leg, 1/4, I should say. You don't have to put much force, just check where the bone is, where they meet, and then just try to scrape it out or slice it down. Second quarter. This time, we're gonna go on to our breast. For the breast, just go onto the middle. Again, this is where that wishbone's gonna get in the way. Just push. Wishbone sits right there. So if it's there, then you're gonna have a hard time removing the breast part. Just push. Again, the knife is always towards the bone so that you get more of the meat than the bone. It's another quarter. Sorry, yeah, another quarter. Then do the same thing on the other side. Just push, scrape. That joint right there. This one you can throw into your sauce, make another set of gravy, or just give it to the boys, feed it to your dog. So you have two sets, one set of breast, and you have one set of leg quarters. Now when you start serving the food, you want to serve one part of the breast, which is white meat, and one part of the dark meat or your legs. Just go into the deepest part of that joint and then try to break that off. Then just push the knife in between the joints that you see right there. So you have your thigh and your drumstick. Do the same thing on the other side or on the other leg. Again, check. That's the joint right there. Just go past the joint. Like so. So it's not gonna be the most, elegant looking chicken, but these are the basics. Now, when you go onto the breast part, you have here the thinner side of the breast and you have the thicker side. That means you have to slice more on to the thicker part. So you have even size. You know that your chicken is well cooked when you see the fibers are not, too, let's say, segregated. They're more intact and the juices are still coming out. So that's how you know that you cook your bird good. Do the same thing on the other side or the other breast. Then it's much more easier if you're gonna pair them now, unless the client or the guest specify that he or she only wants white meat or only dark meat. All you have to do is pair one dark with one light, like so. Another thigh goes onto this part, or maybe this one. Then breasts get drumstick, drumstick. So when you serve them or when you plate them, you just have to get them, put them on the plate, done, easy, Bob's your uncle. We are ready to plate. You want everything at arm's reach, everything on the counter, including your garnishes. Choose a garnish that you use on the dish or that will complement an item on the dish. Make sure everything is still warm, even the sauce. This one I heat it up just before we start the plate. I want to start some sauce, or putting some sauce at the bottom of the plate, like so. And then you want to build up, not spread around. You want to see some plate still, like the white part of the plate, but still you want to see the individual components of the dish. Make sure you have spoons when you are plating. You don't want to use your hands or use less hands as possible. Breast part on one side, then just to put some height, you can use we can put the drumstick like so. And then you want to have contrast in color. So we're gonna put something green or something red to start. Put some tomatoes in there, roasted tomatoes. It's always nice to have odd numbered items on the plate. So we're gonna start with 3 tomatoes, and then we're gonna build up from there. Our pumpkin. And then to top everything, to put more contrast, we're gonna add your asparagus. And of course, for the starch siding, we're gonna add in some potatoes. Oops. Potatoes there. And potatoes over here. Then for the garnish, since we use sage, we're gonna put sage onto our chicken. So you wanna put sage, or you wanna put something green on top of something either dark or red. And since basil complements tomato, we're gonna put in basil as well on top of our tomato. Okay, like that. Simple enough. Let's take a look at that close up. So that's it. All you have to do now is eat. But please take note of the following, the things that we talked about today: proper blanching, proper workflow, cleaning in between, using of the chopping boards, proper roasting, your basting, the proper temperature of the chicken. All those stuff should be more on intuitive for you guys, or to you guys, when you work inside the kitchen, in a professional kitchen. And I hope this would be going to be a part of your arsenal when it comes to cooking. And with that, I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.